Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
And welcome to another episode of I Never Knew, or Inc. by Life Coach Maureen. I am Maureen Scanlon, a certified life coach, relationship expert, author, podcast host, and speaker. I have a fabulous treat for you today. When I saw this beautiful lady and what she does, I thought it is just the most wonderful niche that is something that we don't think about. So I am here today with Sharon Rolph. She is a behavioral scientist. She retired from Boeing in 2016. She became a retirement essence coach, which I love that title. That's also when she started bouncing off the walls, trying to figure out if each day was productive. So the human being or not the human doing, right? She found her essence statement, rescued her, and helped her live daily from her inner spark. That's also when she started being an influence and created 53 retirement podcasts, started a boomers meetup group, created a course for senior centers, and became an author. Her book is called Fresh Courage in Retirement, Finding Purpose, Essence, and Fulfillment. And we'll hear more about her book in a little bit. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maureen. I bet you have some interesting subjects on I Never Knew. Yeah.
It's so varied. That's what I love about this podcast is, just the human experience is so varied. We're all so different, but we all have a story that can help someone else because there's someone else out there who's living that experience in the moment. And if they can hear our guests and say, oh, wow, look what they did. That's an inspiration to me. What I loved about your niche and what you do is I've had older clients that I've coached, and you're right. There's a certain point where they think, well, what am I supposed to do now once I retire? So tell us how that journey for you started after you started climbing the walls after retiring from Boeing.
Well, I did a singles conference for my church way back in the 80s, and my director told me, Sharon, when you have a big event, have something else to plan on, to go to after this big event before it happens, because otherwise, well, he didn't say, but I got the impression that depression might set in, after you kind of like giving birth, there's this lull afterwards. Well, so I had signed up, it worked out at my job that they brought something in my email saying, well, here's this partnering that we're doing, and it's kind of in line with your career. So would you like to sign up and take this course? And it was a coaching course. And I thought, yeah, it does kind of line up. I think I should check into that. But it started the week before I retired. So that was my go-to event before I retired. And I didn't get Boeing to pay for it, but hey, I like investing in myself anyway.
Oh my goodness, Sharon, you're cutting out just a little bit. I think maybe if you have your headphones, it might be
Okay.
a little bit better. I want to make sure they all hear you nice and clear. Let's see if that works a little bit better. The beauty of technology and the challenges.
Okay, does that help?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Maybe put your microphone closer to your mouth
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Ah, that's
Okay.
much better. Yay, yay, good. I'm glad we caught it early. So
Yeah.
Boeing wouldn't pay for it, but you said, "Hey, this is really cool. Once I retire, I have this other purpose." And what is this essence? Tell us about the essence of coach.
Well, that's the first thing they taught us in coaching school was to write our essence. And we had to come to class with a form filled out that asked us all kinds of questions about ourselves. And it kind of was an inventory. And they took what we love and what our characteristics of our personality and our values and our hot buttons and our dreams and wishes and goals for about 8 or 9 different things, areas of life, and put that all in a mixing bowl kind of thing. And then we came up with a metaphor. Well, my metaphor was quite an amazing experience in itself. Back when I was in Dallas, Texas, they had every May, the first weekend, they have a May fair. And I went late on a Sunday afternoon, and way back in the corner was a jewelry designer, but he had been a geometry teacher. Well, his geometry, I think, played into his jewelry design. And I was so moved when I put the rings on my fingers, something in my gut moved. I took them off and put them back on, and they moved, something moved again. And so they've always been on my wish list. They're rather pricey, so I'm still waiting for the day I can buy one. But so I decided to use that as my metaphor. And so I am precious jewel of wisdom. I am colorful collaborator, motivator, and learner. I am authentic uh, and pure inspirer. I light fires. So potential has always been um, kind of a mystery to be solved. I remember as a teenager, I wondered what my potential would be. Well, now I love bringing out the potential in others, and that's what I'm doing in retirement.
I just love that. So if if someone is thinking of retiring, and I retired from a corporate job in December of 26 years, and then but I had started the coaching business, so I'm still growing, doing the entrepreneurship. But if you are at retirement age and you're 65 and over and you retire from your job and you feel this sort of what now, the what next moment, how do you help people find their essence and their purpose and their what next?
Well, you mentioned a little bit ago that our jobs is kind of a human doing. And in retirement, we need to get acquainted with our human being. So my essence statement talks about how I be, who I am. It's the shift from moving from your head and logic down to your heart.
Yeah.
So paying for the roof over our head and our education and our cars and all that, we get very, very, focused in our doing. And I would say even before you retire, it's common for people to plan 2, 3, maybe even 5 years ahead before they retire of what would they like to do, what could be possible for them. Oftentimes it's doing something very intentional with your hobbies that you kind of maybe put in the closet for a while. Or it might be getting out that trombone that you used to love to play in the high school band. But one of the podcasts that I did with an AARP president for Washington State, he had 9 points of what you get from volunteering. And you're learning, you're doing things for other people, but you're learning in the process. He volunteered at the Arboretum here, and he became the expert in wood based plants. he volunteered a hospice place. And one of the things he did, he found that his dentist was volunteering there too. Had no idea that his dentist knew a couple different languages and had been to different countries. So there's lots of learning that is wrapped up in that package of volunteering.
Yes, yes, I love that. And also how you incorporate the behavioral scientist part of that, because tell us about why that's so important and what was the education portion that really kind of give you this. I always say you come from a life experience as well as an education, and then you end up right in the middle with something you're passionate about. How did the behavioral scientist part of this play into starting this for you in retirement?
Well, that's kind of a magical moment in itself. I had been on the campus to, I don't know whether I was trying to pick up a grade or what exactly, but here walking the opposite direction of me was my just most recent instructor. And it had been a elective course that I took, and I said how much I loved it to him. And he says, well, if you like this course, then you should check into the behavioral science program that we have. And, if I hadn't met up with him that day, it might never have happened. But the behavioral science, okay, so the part of that process was a very much of a healing process because there had been sexual abuse in our home for years, and I wasn't the main victim, but I kept saying I glad he keeps his hands off me. But you have to process that and start becoming, dealing with your pain and who you are or who you should have been, should it had been a perfect childhood. And I remember times, going to church and hugging people so I would get a hug. Or, if somebody came up behind me and said, boo, I would faint on the floor. I was just that fragile. But that is very much, well, and then as I was at Boeing, um, behavioral scientists often are people who um, work with addicts. And I didn't want to work with addicts. I wanted to bring out the best in people. So one of the profiles I took, I think a couple of them actually said that I was a maximizer. I like that term. I like bringing out the best in people or a program or improving anything that is valuable and good. And so I think being a maximizer and an empowerment um, coach for boomers is a perfect combination to be effective for them and help them in their transformation as well.
I really enjoy that. And you just made me think of something. So my parents are the boomer generation, and when I told them about my life coaching career, they had no idea what this thing was. And so have you found that the generation, your generation, has a hard time accepting these sort of new ideas of coaching and this empowerment? Because I tell me if I'm right, especially with your history and your family with the sexual abuse, it's sweeping under the rug. We don't talk about this stuff. And now here you are, part of that generation saying, oh no, we're going to talk about this stuff. So was that empowering right there, just being able to finally talk about it?
Well, it's pretty daunting. I consider myself, Maureen, a pioneer. And one of the we use the term sweeping things under the rug quite often in school, but we actually had a T-shirt for our class that was an elephant with its legs up in the air and a crossbones for its eyes, and it was evidence, that let's talk about what really does happen. So it has been tough, and yet all the more challenging to be a international speaker on this, because I believe boomers want us to give them something to do. They want to be engaged. They can make a difference in the world, and yet there's not very many roads that they see are open. for come alongside us and help us do what we're doing. I picture the day that we see billboards that say, foundations that are saying, boomers, we need you to come alongside us and what we're doing in your community. Or just even a general statement of, boomers, what are you doing to help your favorite charity? And I'm starting every week. I find something new of where people are rising up and engaging the boomers, but it's still pretty small movement yet. There's a lady out of Boston who has started the purpose equation, and her and I on LinkedIn, we want to start a purpose movement. So I'm starting to offer to local senior living or senior communities here a podcast, a purpose movement series that I can go in and present either monthly or maybe even bi-weekly to talk about purpose. And she's even had experience with dementia patients with purpose. Who knew? Yeah.
I love that, like sort of reaching in there and hanging on there. My grandmother had dementia and Alzheimer's, so that to me is really close to my heart. What is the one resistant thing you hear most boomers say?
Well, I think most of them say that they're either bored or stuck or frustrated. And that's, we don't often talk about, well, in fact, Maureen, I I might write my next book saying, okay, Maureen, your generation, here's some things you could do to help your parents know that they're stuck. Because oftentimes we're too close to ourselves to, oh yeah, well, like when I get real quiet, people know I'm stewing on something if I get real quiet. Well, yeah, so they challenge me. Well, we need to challenge our parents on how's it going for you in retirement. I know one of the first ladies I talked to from Facebook, in fact, she was insulted that her daughter, because she now no longer had a job she loved, she was forced out of, her daughter treated her as if she was invisible. You don't have a job, so you're invisible. And that's another area that I can identify with, because I've felt invisible from my early years. That was what was being safe. But now that I've gone through my process of transformation and getting, the history behind me, I've now become the queen of courage as that's the transformation from being invisible to the queen of courage. I walked into class down here at coaching class, and I came back from lunch and I slapped the table and stomped my foot and said, it's not okay to be invisible. Where did that come from? I shocked myself. What was that about? But I had actually taken to class, I think the first or second weekend, various hats.
I love it. I love it.
It might have been connected with that, and I had no idea. My subconscious was kind of doing the work there, and so I now have some short little TikToks running with various hats, and thinking about, are you in this boat or this boat?
That's great, listeners. If you're listening in audio, she had this beautiful black lacy hat that she put on. And I think it's so neat that, you still have, I think when we get older, we think, well, we're not needed anymore. And so we become sort of this side thought to our families and our friends. And I definitely think it's sort of that cycle of life where you take care of your kids and your family, and then as you get older, they're like, well, we'll take care of you when you're sick. But you feel like maybe there's this little period of time, this little transitory place where, does anyone care what I'm doing right now that I'm not working and I'm not taking care of them? So I could see where that would cause some depression or feeling abandoned or insignificant. And I love the idea that you said of helping. Like, I'm 52, my parents are 76, and I love that idea of all the generations learning how to take care of their parents at every stage. I think that's a really good idea because I don't think children really know what their parents need because it's always been our parents guided us. What am I supposed to do? They don't need my advice. I don't give advice. Mom gives advice. So I think that's really neat. What would be some of the topics that you would talk about with, say, if I went um, to your conference or your speech, what would you tell me to do for my parents?
Well, asking questions is a really good place to start. As coaches, that's what we're paid to do, is ask questions. And I drove Lyft for a year just before the pandemic. And when I tell them, my writers, about my podcast, one, they thought I was pretty unique at my age doing that. But they said, well, my parents need to hear this. So to me, helping, you know, people reflect as a mirror to us who we are. And as you hold up a mirror to your parents, they might not realize that they've been depressed for a week or two now, and I picked up on it. So asking them, like, are they getting out of the house, or who have they called recently? Or I remember sitting in a parking lot up in Anacortes, where I was born. I was there to do a senior center presentation, and I saw a couple people sitting in their cars in the parking lot. And there's part of me that was glad they were out of the house. Yay! But if that was the essence of their socialization, to people watch, in the parking lot, that kind of made me sad. But, they were, making baby steps towards being social. So asking them about their schedule, even asking them, Marina, about, are they keeping up with their doctor's appointments or wellness checks or hearing or visual. I've been noticing my eyesight is changing, and I'm supposed to be, my glasses are supposed to make it better, but I am having to squint more. Or hearing is, I've been turning on the closed caption on my TV a lot lately, just because I don't always hear quite what's being said, and their articulation may not be as good as it could be. But so
So
asking about that, just being curious, not blaming at all, but curious.
checking in, which is important, I think, with every relationship at every age, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
check in with, I check in with my grandkids, I check in with my adult children, I check in with my parents, check in with my spouse. So we need to make sure that we're doing that. And you're right. My parents can tend to get a little bit old dog, new tricks. They're not appreciative of change. They're very set in their ways. So that's why when I heard what you do, I thought, wow, that must be challenging. Because as I coach younger people, they're like ready. They want this big change. But if I were to tell my mom and dad to do something different, boy, the resistance that I would get. So do you find that to be challenging? Is to get them out of their comfort zone and because of their age and their habits?
Well, yeah, I've got this, cherish forever what makes you unique. I do it in different colors here.
Oh,
But
love that.
so what I would do with making this is remind them who they were. They often think, because they don't have their business card anymore, that this is, old stuff. But just like we re-engineer or repurpose our recycling, for example, let's repurpose our seniors. And my favorite way to do that is ask them, what did they do in high school that they loved doing, like being on the debate team, or that trumpet, player, or helping mentor other students that were, needing help. Maybe you had a booth for lemonade out on the street, when you're a kid. That is still you. that, your experiences, your network, your friends, all of that is made a bigger you than, of course, since than when you're in high school. But um, oftentimes it's time to dust them off and use them again. There are a few databases out there where you can volunteer, and you can put in all the criteria of things you love to do and are good at. And oftentimes our natural gifts are something. In fact, part of the exercise with doing our essence statement is um, having others say, well, if you're like this and you describe yourself as this, then maybe you're also like this and this, to blossom out, because sometimes we're too close to our skin to really be able to describe it.
Oh, I really like that. It really is, because it's not just about, it's no longer about making a living and surviving. Now it's like, this is what you get to do. This is what you waited for. This is what we all wait for, us to enjoy these golden years. Now, you mentioned AARP earlier. What other resources or places can people go to if they do want to volunteer?
Well, as soon as I said that, I thought I should have lined something up. But in my book, there are some of those. I have an appendix where it's kind of like going deeper. I do some research for you, and I do have a couple of a free resource page that, excuse me, that is at least 2 pages of small print of resources that are available. And like one, for instance, Maureen, is women who have created a couple of camping networks, and they'll name a spot, and a lot of them have bought these old like 12, 14-foot trailers and refurbished them with a bebop theme, or an Elvis theme, or Betty Boop theme. And they
Oh, I
they
love
get
that.
together and camp and tell stories. And the beauty is, to use Google and say, okay, I like singing, I like camping, I like cooking, and I'm retired, and put that in a Google search and see what comes up for you.
Wow, I would never have thought that. That's really neat. I mean, that's the beauty of the internet, and that's kind of bringing the generations together too. The boomer generation with the technology generation. It's I love that, and I think I always say, your vibe brings your tribe, and you'll find your people. Go find your people, or they'll find you. You'll attract it in some way, and nothing happens by accident. So you meeting that professor, nothing meant for you will ever miss you. And I love that. So, where is your book available?
Well, let me first slip in here, Maureen, and say Chip Conley was one of those people. Okay, the movie, The Intern,
Mhm.
you had the young people, and you had Chip coming in. Well, Chip in his story, Robert De Niro, I think, was in the movie, but you they were both learners. They had their expertise, but they had to bring together and enhance each other. And so that's a new. It's not all bad. So challenging. I don't have young people around me, so my technology skills are still kind of slow maturing, because I need help. And who do you ask? There's actually a tech savvy teacher who goes around to these communities. Senior Savvy is called, and she often does a 5-minute video at Best Buy and say, here's why this product would be good for seniors. Because one of the things she held up was a keyboard that was white, and it had strong dark letters on it. I've got 2 or 3 keys that don't have letters on them at all anymore. I, I could use her keyboard. So,
I
um,
like that. Senior savvy. I could use that, and I'm not quite a senior yet, because boy, I definitely have my challenges. So I love what you say is during your um, lowest point, the place that you felt the loneliest is you processed this family secret of sexual abuse. And I love this saying, or this line that you said, there were times I felt as fragile as an eggshell, and there were times I'd give hugs at church so I could get a hug. And what did you do to overcome these traumas in your life? What is someone in that moment in their life? What is something that you would say to them? Don't give up. This is what you need to do.
Good question, because part of the thing I started studying early on was change management. Retirement is a huge transition. So a principle of change that we often forget is it's kind of like a you're starting out here, that this is where I'm stuck, and the change, you kind of go along, and then you really learn what it's going to take, and before you come to that new high level, there is this bottom where people tend to get stuck and lose sight of where they're trying to get to. So that's an area you can help your parents with. This is hard to learn or understand, or some of the webinars I'm on is like, I don't even know how to ask questions. But my uncle here is 88, and he said, getting old isn't for sissies. It is so tough. So that the main point I would say, Maureen, is to help them remember what gave them, what warmed their heart. That is actually a mental strength process or tool. When you're facing something challenging, is hold in your mind for like 15 seconds something that makes your heart warm and fuzzy. The the first time I did that, I was remembering when I was in third grade in the Christmas program, and I was a reader, and how do you be a reader for Christmas? I looked around and taught myself. I watched the people up in front of others and are on the TV, and when somebody told me then at the end of the Christmas program that I was their favorite reader or the best reader, because I taught myself how to do it, and they were pleased to speak up and speak, look at your audience and speak slow enough so they understand you. But anyway, I've gotten off course a little bit.
No, that's okay. No, it sounds like you're saying basically, remember what you've done. Remember, affirm all the things you've accomplished. So when you come across these struggles and these changes that need to happen, you got to look back and give yourself that pat on the back and say, but you've been through harder things, or you made it through this thing. So I think you were right on topic. I think you're absolutely right. I love the you. I think you're right. It reminds me of a ball where you're going down, and then if you put a ball, it kind of goes up, comes back, comes up, and then it kind of settles in the bottom until you tip it over, make it a C for choice. And I just threw that in.
Yeah, I like to think of things oftentimes as a game, and be curious. Curiosity is a strong point of a 3-year-old. Yeah. And they're starting now to bring senior living places next door to daycare centers, because they both they're very present and can dance and sing and play together and bring each other joy.
What a great idea. And I feel animals are the same way. So between children and animals, you can't be upset around them. You can't be sad. You cannot, the double negative, you cannot not smile. There's just something about children and animals that bring out the best in us. And I think it's just that pureness. I think it's just the pure, unadulterated joy that they live life with. And they remind us, just be a kid again. And especially if you get the kids with the seniors, I think that's beautiful, because it's a reminder, we may physically be older, but I think as we get older, I'm halfway there. I always think, man, I'm not 52, I'm 25 in my brain. So I can imagine, as we get older and then you retire, it's the same thing. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not I'm not 60 or 75, I'm 35. It's physically we're one way. We got to keep our minds young, don't you agree?
Yeah, I have a chair sitting right here, and I've often thought over the years, people don't realize if the best they can do in a day is to just sit in a chair for 24 hours, they're no less loved. And that often escapes their, you know, heart or, logic, I guess, instead of being and doing, that you can still write letters, you can still um, talk to people, you can still listen. Those are talents that are kind of low. in- Um, there's not very much of that going on anymore, it seems like. And it also seems like the one of the best way things that grandpas and grandmas are cherished for is that being heard and seen.
Oh my goodness. That is so true. I think we've lost the curiosity of listening to our grandparents about stories. I just started this journey. I took an ancestry DNA test and I've started exploring my relatives. And I mean, I've gotten pretty far. I didn't even know who my great grandfather was. And I got on this ancestry site and it pulled up a picture. Someone had posted it, which I guess if you're related, people can post. And this picture was a spitting image of my son. And this is his great great grandfather. And I thought, we don't talk enough about this because my grandfather had died when I was 21. And, we don't sit down and say, tell me about our family, tell me the stories. And anyone who's not a senior, who's either middle aged or even younger, inquire with your families, ask them stories, write it down. It's I remember having these conversations with my grandmother, and she was stone deaf, so she read lips. And she would sit down and tell me about her boyfriends in the war, and she wouldn't have married my grandfather if her boyfriend hadn't gone off to war. And those moments were so endearing for me, and especially when she ended up with dementia and Alzheimer's, because I took the time. It's like you said, taking that time and it also gives them a feeling of purpose, doesn't it, and worthiness, like you said, if they're
Oh
just sitting
yeah.
in a chair. I just think it's important to nurture that.
Well, and what's popping up for me is how the grandkids can use these stories for some of their writing assignments in English class.
See, everything has its purpose. It's this uh, law of reciprocity. We all benefit.
Just last weekend, I finished reading The Elephant Whisperer. And what we're talking about, the longevity of generations of elephants or animals or Africans. I don't know, that book really touched me, and I really can't fully put my finger on what it was, but he took so many risks for the elephants. He went out and talked to the elephants. So there was, and he spent time, lots of time around the elephants because they were wild, and he's trying to get them acclimated to both him and his presence and his vehicle. But that generational, some of the values were there. It was just an incredible book. And yeah, the ancestry element comes into that too.
Yeah, it's interesting, when we start really inquiring, where do we, and it helps us, I think, do some of that inner work to figure out who we are. Like, where did we come from? I just found out I had a great great grandmother, maybe a great 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 grandmother, and her name is Selena Desjardins. And I was intrigued. Yeah, she was born in Canada, and I had no idea. So she's French, obviously. And she passed when she was 37. And I want to know why. Yeah, so it's opening up new stuff for me. And you hear bits and pieces through your family, but really, I think we've got to keep passing this stuff on to keep our legacies alive. So that's the elephant whisperer.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and he kept going back when something would happen. He wanted to understand why. So he would keep going back until he found an answer. And at the end of the book, um, one of the elephants that he had especially spent extra time with, because he's kind of more ostracized from the crowd, um, he turned um, kind of dangerous, very dangerous, and they were going to have to put him down. And after they put him down, they found out that he had an abscessed tusk. And what brought on the anger was, or the viciousness was, he had backed into that elephant and hit his tusk, and the elephant kind of went kind of wild, and they were in a jeep, and he knocked over the jeep and made it tumble, and nobody was hurt, but um oh, there was such a sensitive nerve there that made him go berserk. And now I understand, and he found the reason for the whatever. So he was so curious in finding out the why, tracking it back.
Yeah, the why. Isn't that what we're all curious about? Is the why. That's always the question is the why. So tell us, because what you say is that it's page after page of thought-provoking ideas, resources, and inspiration for the retiree. And I'm so happy there's resources in there. So is it something that what is the benefit if I go get your book and I give this to my mom and dad? What are they going to get out of your book?
Well, I see my book as a DIY, do it yourself, for finding your essence. I mean, your purpose. It doesn't quite go into the essence, but a lot of the work that you do for your purpose is also used for your essence. So I try to, okay, so explore the possibilities. I'm trying to give you ideas as to how would this fit for you? And if you're, in fact, I just last weekend wrote an article for my local paper about, imagine, the feeling of seeing somebody walking down the street of a hat that you knitted for them, and they're wearing your hat, and you had, play a connection now to that person. Or being a pen pal to somebody in France, and finding out that there's a connection more than you imagined, with the magic, but it's also the heart. What makes tugs at your heart because of something you're doing that is making a difference for other people, but also for yourself.
Yeah, it's getting outside of ourselves and really being a part of the world and making a difference to the world. And I think that's maybe some of us give up on those things. Maybe
Have
as
you
we
ever
get older.
have you ever considered how, as kids, we kind of adopt compensating behaviors?
Oh, yeah.
If
Yes.
you're not getting enough attention, and you can't get good attention, let's get some bad attention. I think we often have that in various aspects of our life, and nobody told us, you don't need to do that anymore. Here's a better way to do that. But there could be compensating behaviors you find in even your parents. Like sleeping in till noon might be a compensating behavior because they're depressed. So how could you help them um, go for a walk? One of the industries that they're saying it needs a lot of growth is providing pleasure and memories for intergenerational trips.
Oh, like give us an example of that. Taking vacations together?
Well, yeah. So here's one of my guests was, yeah, exactly, vacation. But in fact, I think I included this in my article, that there's a Habitat for Humanity has a division called Caravanners, and you take your van to a construction site and stay in your own housing while you help build a house.
I love that idea. How fun. How fun is that? I mean, I always feel the whole idea, people hesitate to go out there and do something because they feel like they're going to be judged or they're not going to be good at it. But once you take that step, you get over that fear and that insecurity, especially when we're older and we haven't done that before. It's getting out of that comfort zone. When you start giving, you get so much out of it, don't you?
Yeah, I'm even in the last couple of weeks trying to rev up my appreciation for the condo that I live in. And yeah, it's certainly not perfect, and there's things that need replacing or fixed, but to stir up that how beneficial am I have a view of the Puget Sound right here. I have to get my nose up to my patio door, but not a problem. I can do that. To see the ferries going in and across the street is a kids playground for elementary school. And just sitting on my patio is such a blessing and luxury that most people don't have. And so
Oh, that sounds
appreciate, yeah,
amazing.
bringing
Yeah.
that, both loving my life, loving my things, and loving nature. Being out and going for a walk almost every day is such a therapy.
Yes, gratitude stacking. As we were talking before we got on, she is in Seattle where it's absolutely stunning. She would not be walking in Arizona right now where I'm at when it's 115 out, but in December now that's different. But I want to touch on something just that kind of hit my mind. Um, do you talk about dating with seniors at all?
I haven't, but I've also never been married. And I think having a companion in this stage of life sounds pretty good. But there's so many fraud cases online that it's I like I've gotten close to a couple guys that I thought sounded really straight and quality and fun to talk to, and I gave one of them money, and then I got in touch with his daughter, and he said, "Oh, well, he isn't always as he seems to be." And
Oh,
I got the feeling he might be bipolar, perhaps. But I could tell he was enjoying, talking with me, and I was getting some things from him too. Um, but the other one seems like a lot of stories are, well, oh, I'm in a place where I can't be on Facebook. Can I have your number? Well, I'm really reluctant to give anybody my number. I'm talking to a guy I met last weekend, in fact, and he asked for my number. I just let it pass and said, maybe. But I was supposed to have a conversation this morning with somebody that found me on Facebook, and he looked pretty legit, and he didn't show up. So, um, I think I think it's a lot safer when it's local, and somebody you can put your eyeballs on.
I agree. I agree, and you get more vulnerable, when you're older because you how scams work is a lot of it is because of technology, and so if our seniors don't understand all of the technology, they're trusting, because you didn't have to mistrust people back then because people were more honest, I think, growing up, and I think that's a good subject, and I think a good resource is at your local senior center. See if they have dances that they put on. I think things like that would be wonderful.
Well, and hobbies are a great place to connect with people. Where you have something in common. One of my friends, she goes down and plays ping pong every Thursday, with the senior center. So the guy that the most recent guy, he said he was in Johannesburg, and his project was delayed or whatever. But I kept telling him, until I see and touch and feel you and know how you treat me, I refuse to fall in love with you.
Good for you. Good for you. Because it takes time and we need to feel their spirit. We can't just believe words on a computer. We have to like be in their presence. It's something that I actually wrote about in my book, um, dating and online dating and how to weed through it, and especially dating older, as I did. So, of course, the podcast is I never knew. And so, what I want to know in our last 10 minutes is what is the one thing you never knew that you know now and you can help others experience?
Um, one of a real strong point that I didn't know until I went to a retirement coaches conference, actually, one of the speakers was, she's created the term solo agers. And solo agers are people who never had kids. And so when you get to be 65, 75, 85, and changing a light bulb can be challenging, or who's going to take you to the doctor or the hospital if you can't drive? So she brought up this awareness and wrote a whole book around solo agers. And part of one of the questions you had, Maureen, about um, both challenging your grandparents is challenging people who are living alone. How are they doing? Are they keeping social? Are they having people that bring them groceries in during the pandemic, maybe? Um, so anyway, that's I want to put a word in for the people that are living alone and how they are the easiest, I think, to forget.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
let's see.
definitely. Check in on them. Check in on
Yeah,
them. I think that's really, we have to be more cognizant of one another and what's going on outside of our own world and our own stuff. We have to look around at our neighbors that do live alone. And I have a neighbor across the street, they're elderly, and he went to the hospital, and I went over there while he was in the hospital. I said, "Do you need a ride? Do you need me to take you to get groceries?" Because she doesn't drive. And, it's those little things that people need that you don't know who, and just ask if they can always say no, but you just got to make sure you're checking in on them. So I
there
think that's
is
a really great point.
there is a network that's starting. I think it started in Boston, and now various cities are setting up their own, where I think ours is called Neighboring Network. And I've now recently found out that they are kind of partnered with the senior center. It's for people, a lot of men especially are doers, and fixing things is just down their alley. So changing a light bulb, yeah, let me do that for you. So,
Yeah.
and it's part of a trading. I'll fix you a dinner for your uh, visitor, your family that's coming in, if you'll help me, strengthen the railing on my steps here, kind of thing. So,
What a
um,
great idea. Like a bartering, basically. Like, I'll do this. I have this talent. I have this. And I love that. That's great to hear that that's happening and that stuff is growing. Um, ah, So, in our last few minutes, where can we find you? Where can we find your book? Throw us, throw us some information where you're going to be. I know you're going to be speaking, and so let us know where we can find you, so they can
um,
talk to you and interact with
yeah.
you.
Well, let me tell you that, I have learned that beauty gets processed in our brain differently than just words. So my book is actually a picture book.
Oh, neat.
It is available on Amazon. And
Okay.
I want to come back to, I didn't exactly, one of the things that I have now know that
Yeah.
this essence thing was, I am so different than what I was in my corporate job, since no longer being invisible, and even taking this mental strength class where you hold something in your mind for 15 seconds. That gave me a big aha about. I said, well, why have just one warm memory? Let's see how many I could come up with. And of my list of 8 or 10, 12 things, half of them were in front of people. What? Was I in the wrong career? And I started taking baby steps as maybe I was supposed to be influential. And I opened that door little by little, in doing my podcast and in writing the book. And now I'm eager to be an international speaker. I want to go to uh, New Zealand and Holland, and there's places I want to go. And hey, it'd be okay if you pay me to go there. Uh, I'm looking for my paddle. I usually hold up a little paddle, and I'm not seeing it. That says my website is called Sharon Rolph, ROLPH.com, and I have a free ebook there that is all on courage, because hey, we need lots of courage in all of our transitions, especially. And it's called A Call to Courage: 3 Tips for Awakening and Igniting Your Inner Spark. So my book doesn't talk about the inner spark that much, but I'm in a class right now and they say, Sharon, you sparkle. All your titles should have sparkle in them.
You do. You light. You're just a light. You can just see the light in you, Sharon. You just are such a fun and positive person. So guys, go find her book on Amazon. It's Sharon Rolph, and it's Fresh Courage in Retirement: Finding Purpose, Essence, and Fulfillment. And go to SharonRolph.com and find that ebook on courage. So the last thing that I ask every single one of my guests, Miss Sharon, is what is your shameless self-indulgence that you eat, do, practice, anything at all?
Well, it would be probably, I have a little bit of chocolate, and I'm saying little, every day. And I guess they call that another vitamin C.
Is it dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Oh, dark, of course.
Yes, antioxidants, guys, antioxidants. So I love it.
I love the Dove brand especially, and Godiva and C's come pretty close.
Oh, those are good with the caramel inside too. Oh, those are the best. So I've had a few people with the chocolate self-indulgence, some of my guests, and then I've had potato chips, and I've had, someone said their self-indulgence was work, and I said no. But then I thought, you know what? If that's what makes them happy and they love what they do, then anything can be a self-indulgence as long as you feel good about it. And what you said about holding that in your mind for 15 seconds, that's the visualization they talk about in NLP, cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's really envisioning what I want, what I can be, and then I move toward that. So I really loved having you on as a guest today. I love what you do for our boomer friends and also for our youth too, because we've got to move everybody along, in the same way. Sharon, it has been an absolute pleasure. You go enjoy your walk in Seattle, and I'm going to sit in the air-conditioned house and think of how nice it is to live by the Puget Sound.
Thank you so much, Maureen. We'll have to do this again.
Definitely. Thank you. It was an honor to have you, and I think our listeners are going to be just absolutely filled with information after meeting you. Guys, it's the end of our podcast, and I thank you so much. You can find me at lifecoachmaureen.com. You can find my books on Amazon. My dog is more enlightened than I am, and my dog is my relationship coach because, as I said, dogs are unconditionally loving, and we can learn so much from them. So thank you. Go make sure, everybody, you give us a 5-star review. Tell your friends. And anyone who's interested in being a guest and you have a powerful, inspirational story, we would love to have you. Don't forget to go find Miss Sharon and say hello. Thank you all.
Dogs are where I get my kisses from.
Oh, see?
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.